to Similarly Different. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Similarly Different. This week I have a pop star. She started from the TV screen and even before that, but I came across her in high school, and she actually doesn't even know this, but I watched all her reality shows that she was on and I saw her journey, and then I got to know her in person, and I feel like if I was really interested in her journey, you guys may be interested in it as well. I'm talking about none other than Natalie Mejia. Thank you for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. I did not know that. You never told me that. That's so sweet. I love that. So you got to see teenage me versus like grown woman me. But
yes, and I love the whole evolution of it. So when I started the podcast, we lightly talked about having her on the show, and I was like, no, we need to make it happen. We need to make it happen. And I was like, it has to happen before I close out the season. So I'm so glad you were able to make time and be on here.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited. I've been watching all your episodes. You're amazing, and I just love all. You're so selective with your guests too, and they all have such important things to say, and I love what you're doing. So
yeah. You know, I think for me it's really important to be able to give the audience a different mixture of elements and people and walks of life, and also be able to shine light in a way that maybe you didn't have an idea of a person or their story or their experience, whether it be from categorizing them into this type of person or actually knowing of them from afar. And I think with you growing up, I saw you on Girlicious. If you guys don't know, she was in a girl group called Girlicious that was put on by Robin Anton from the Pussycat Dolls. And from there, she was, from the moment you saw her on screen, it was one of the people that you wanted to follow their journey, because she was just so cute and so center. She was sassy, and I don't know if you guys had different roles, but to me, you were like the lead of the girl group ultimately. And also, I didn't know at the time, but from her last name, Mejia, I was like, oh, she's Latina. So, you know, growing up, you picked the Latina Barbie, you picked the Latina this. So it's like on the shows, on the reality shows. Yeah, I'm like, that's the Latina I want to like pursue and see where she goes. She ultimately ended up being a part of the girl group, touring and doing all amazing things. And then I actually came across Natalie a few years ago now, like 1 or 2 years ago, and through mutual friends, and I got to know her as Natalie, not Natalie Mejia, you know, from Girlicious. And it was a really sweet experience, and I think that's also why I never mentioned, because I was like, well, I want to get to know her for her today, not, you know, the idea or the identity that I may have created. So without further ado, Natalie, can you let the people know a little bit about yourself, how you started, and I'll interject and ask you a few more questions in there.
So I got my first music start when I was 12 years old. I decided I really wanted to take it more seriously and like do it professionally. So my father was in the music industry. He does radio promotion now, but he worked with the major labels doing artist development. And so, you know, he took me to my first concert, and my mom was a dancer also. So I never, Mom, I'm giving you credit. Like, I'm always talking about my dad and his music job, but my mom was a dancer performer. She was actually also in a girl group with her sisters too at one point, and she did modeling. She was in magazines and things, but my mom, you know, was on the stage a lot. So, but my dad, he was also a musician, and he produced as like a hobby. So he was in the industry as like as a record label exec. And then he just always played music around the house. And I was like, I really want to combine mom and dad's like skill set. And I love this. This is something I'm really passionate about and I want to do. So I told them, I'm serious. I was 12 years old. And I wanted to make a girl group and from friends in my choir. And I was like, so these are the girls, the best singers in the whole school. Like, can we do this? And I first fell in love with the Spice Girls when I was 9. And I was Posh Spice, like you were saying. You identify with someone and you feel like, you know, there's a likeness. So I like gravitated towards her and I was like, I like this one. This is my vibe. So I was 9 years old and I fell in love with the Spice Girls. I was performing in talent shows, but that was just like for school. And it was fun and putting girl groups together on like the play yard. But then I was really serious, you know, when I was 12. Brittany was 15 at the time, Christina Aguilera, these are teenagers. So I was like, if I'm gonna do this, I feel like this is a good time to start. And there were some girls in the choir and I was like, Mom, these are the best singers in the school, like, can we do this? My dad was like, all right. He bought all the equipment, he started producing the songs. I was helping to co-write them, and we got choreographers, and we started taking it to like do school tours and different performances like all over LA. And so I started doing that at 12 and all the way through my teenage years. And there was various girl groups that, we put together in different years. And then, I remember asking the girl group that I was in at the time to come audition with me for Girlicious. And they were like, no, I don't really think that that's my vibe, like reality TV. There was
How
like
old were
some
you
discussion.
when you auditioned?
I was 19.
Oh, wow. So from 12 to 19, like how many girl groups were you in?
2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for long periods of time. So like we were together for like 3+ years, and then I would go on to the next one. And so, I was like, it felt like it was artist development for myself, essentially. And it was just really interesting because I always felt like so close to the girl group vibe. Like it wasn't like I came out and I was like, I'm going to be solo. And that was like my thing. I really enjoyed working with groups. I really felt like there's power in numbers. And so I was just really drawn to working with girl groups. So when I heard about the show, I actually saw the first season, the PCD Presents on TV. And at the very end, they talk about, if you want to try out for the next girl group, I was like, oh my gosh, this is for me. I remember watching it, and I remember like the feeling that I got when I saw the advertisement. So like I went down to Universal Studios, and at the hotel that they had the audition of like thousands of girls, like waited in line. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any connects. I did hear that there was some girls who were brought in by like label people that like knew people to come in and just do like a direct audition, but I had to wait in line. I had to get the number, make friends, in the lobby and stuff like that. And so I remember being so excited about it, and it was just like a kind of a rigorous process because they went through different filters of like different rounds, and so not knowing from day to day like if they're going to keep you. And so I was really, really excited about it, and I was selected. I did the reality show and was selected as one of the 4 girls to go on and put out 2 albums and do like a world tour and all kinds of really awesome, amazing experiences through that process. So yeah, and then fast forward, so because of that reality show and all of the albums, once the girl group disbanded, I decided, I was also on another reality show, which I had a girlfriend of mine who ran a modeling agency, and she did like promo models, and she asked me to come on the show and like assist her with the company to like kind of help run it, because one of the company members, the girls like had scared out, and like they're like, she was saying to me, I could really use your help and your sassy energy to come and like whip these girls into shape for doing these events. And I was like, okay, I'll come and help. So that was a really fun experience also with reality TV that I really enjoyed. And then after that process, I was like, okay, so where does this leave me after all these girl groups and like this reality television? I wanted to emerge as a solo artist for the first time.
At what age did you have that idea?
I was 27.
Okay. And that was after Girlicious had already separated, or was that, did you have the idea of going solo before you guys separated?
I had hopes and dreams of going solo, but I again like was afraid to stand out on my own. I was nervous because I felt like on stage you get to pass the mic around. It's not your turn the whole time. Like you're not on, like you're out of breath if you're singing every lyric, like I just kind of knew the math, I guess, if you will. With interviews, it's all on you how the interview goes. Whereas, if you're with other ladies, it's like they can answer the question for you. If you're not having a great day, they can pick up and like you exchange, different parts of the process. And so it was nerve wracking. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do this. But I'm actually skipping sections. So right before I went solo, I was in a girl group with my 2 sisters. I have 2 younger sisters, and we were called the Mejia sisters, and we did do a tour as well. We went to China.
That was before Girlicious?
That was after Girlicious.
Oh, okay.
It was a small, like I would say probably like a 6-month thing. We had a single, and we were like touring clubs at the time, and we went on tour to China for 3 months, and that was a really fun experience and crazy experience also. But after that happened, after the girl group, I was like, you know what, I think I'm ready to try a new thing. I think I'm ready to like emerge as a solo artist. And so I was like, okay, so this is going to be my first. And again, the first records that I did, I had creative input, but I didn't write any of it. I was like, again, allowing other people. And mind you, I had been doing songwriting with my dad in the studio for years prior to Girlicious. And then getting into the studio with Girlicious was not about my songwriting skills. It was about what the label brought in professionals who had hits. And they were like, this is the formula.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, trusting the process. And so, my first EP, my first solo EP was not written by myself, and I enjoyed doing it. And it was a fun and nerve-wracking experience because again, I'm going out on the stage all by myself and saying, I'm going to carry the weight of what you're used to seeing me as, which is like a moment in the spotlight, and then sharing that versus like, okay, all the ad libs are on you, all the notes are on you, all the choreography's on you, like
Right.
all the questions are on you. And I was like, okay. So it was a growing experience, and I really enjoyed it. So flash forward to where I am now. I hadn't released a project in, wow, my son is going to be 8 years old. So I remember right before I got pregnant with my son, I had not put out a project. So I'm going to say 9 years. It's
Wow.
been 9 years since I put out
I feel
a
really
solo
old.
album.
I feel like Girlicious was just out 5 years ago or something.
When I say almost 20 years ago, we were
That's
like, what?
insane. Okay, so wait, we have to bring it back because you were in Girlicious, you guys were touring, you did the reality show. You basically got, you know, an experience that so many girls at that age were like wanting and dreaming for, whether they were looking at it from the TV screen or they were in labels or their parents were shopping them or their team members were shopping them. So how was it for you experiencing that type of momentum, that type of fame at a time where social media isn't where it is now, you know?
Yeah.
You were 19 when you started with Girlicious?
Yeah, I was
Until
19.
25? 26?
So, yeah, about 25.
So it's like at that point, it's such transformative years for a woman
Yes.
that we swear we know who we are and we actually know nothing. You're like, I know this. Leave me alone. Parents, back away. And you're like, I know
Got
myself.
this.
Yeah.
Got
And I
this.
feel like when you hit 27, 28, you start like rethinking your entire life, which
You're
is
like-
why I
Yeah.
asked you, when did that idea to go solo even
Yeah.
come about? Because our frontal lobe starts forming and we're just like, we start saying no easier. We start being like,
Yeah.
what do we really like? Where do I want to go in life? Granted, we have those thoughts in the mid of our 20s, but I feel like they change every few days.
Yeah. Like, we'll try this. We'll try that. We'll try
Yeah.
that.
And you're just like, oh, I don't really know. This
Yeah.
feels good for now, you know?
Yeah.
So in that time, how was that era for you in your early 20s and figuring out yourself as a woman, having so much opportunity and opening so many doors? Like, where was your ego? Where was your pride? Where was your confidence?
Yeah, I feel like I envisioned myself on the stage and being a performer, and you know, had hoped for success and what that level of success meant to me at that age, at a young age, before I decided, you know, to actually do the show and go on to do the group and put the album out. And I thought I knew what it would be like to be a performer because I had been performing for so long, but I wanted the musical component, the musical aspect, which is like, sure, hand me the mic, hand me the song. But I didn't realize that, and you don't realize what it's like to have scrutiny and what it's like to have like judgments and comments on something like YouTube. Like YouTube was like, it was a painful place for me because once the show aired, we didn't have at that time Instagram, and we didn't have, like, we had MySpace, and like MySpace kind of was like, it could be brutal, but like you let people into your space, like you let like your friends essentially in your space, not so much like the naysayers and just the world, the public. So YouTube was a hard place for me. I remember going on to like review, and I wanted to know, well, what do people think? You know, I was so curious, and that was a very painful experience to just.
I think YouTube is the place where people started getting muscles in their fingers for the first time and started being like, I'm going to tell you about yourself.
Yeah, I'm like, oh.
Yeah. Because I feel like MySpace was so gentle and more about coding and how does your page look and add a song and your
Yes.
top 8. And that was the drama.
That was
your
the
top
drama.
8,
Yeah.
you know?
I got moved out of her top 8, like literally.
Yeah. And then YouTube came and it was like, let me tell you everything I think about you
Yes,
without.
with no picture, no info about you, and it's just strangers who just like essentially come in and just like tell you, you know, say whatever they feel essentially. And so that was like, oh, people have opinions, and I knew people had opinions, but I didn't have to hear everybody's thoughts, but they're right there for you to read. And so especially at a young age like 19, I think it's very like you're developing who you are like as a young woman, and you're already self-conscious, like you're already like, and even though I was exuding so much confidence because I feel like I had to like, it's like fake it till you make it, like believe it with all your heart, like so that, you know, other people believe it too, because if you go in there and you're fearful, you're not going to perform your best, you know? So it was like, there was a level of things I knew because I had been doing it since I was 12. There was a level of confidence of like, oh, I know my way around the stage, or I know, you know, certain things because I've been practicing for 7 years. But there was other things that I maybe wasn't so confident at that I had to like exude that anyway because I was in a competitive space.
I think also there's a few layers to what you just said. One, this is going to sound silly, but I think you're going to understand me. As a Taurus woman, there's this thing that our life can be falling apart, but when we have to turn it on, we turn it on, and nobody will ever know, you know? But in that same sentiment, if you don't believe in horoscopes, that's fine, because I think growing up in an industry and proving to yourself, proving to your parents at this point have done so much to be able to help you. You went through a whole competition. You were in front of the TV. Now you get this opportunity. You don't want it to slip before your hands. Yeah. You feel like, oh my God, who knows? I don't know if you were the breadwinner at this point of any, you know, of your family, or at least helping. It's like, well, if this doesn't work, what's going to happen? Now you have all this pressure as a 19-year-old that you put, you know, your immediate family through all this of them supporting you, and what if you just drop the ball, as well as the fans that really like you, the fact to show up, and then you add on to the fact the labels, the publicists, the manager, the choreographers, you know, whoever is your day-to-day manager and maybe is a strict person, or maybe that's the person that actually lifts you up, but then the person above them is the one you're scared of. You know, you have so much pressure and scrutiny going on at all times, and then we add social media at that point, you know?
Literally.
So did you ever experience anxiety or depression in that time because of the pressure?
I experienced a lot of anxiety in that process, and I feel like I was very emotional, although like I was emotional behind closed doors, because like again, when it's time to like put on, it's time to like come out and put on like your game face or like your performance face. You're doing a meet and greet, you're doing all of these things, but I was like struggling internally with like my emotions, because again, I'm reading these things online from certain people, and then I'm going to a meet and greet where it's the public. I don't know who wrote that comment. I don't know who wrote 10 of those comments. And like now I'm like taking pictures, and it's like it does something to your self-confidence, and you know, it does something to, we're human beings, so you know, it's like you take on those things as if they're truths, and you have to kind of separate that. So I had to develop a bulletproof vest, but inside of that, within that is like you're in a girl group with other teenage girls going through this experience for the first time, and there is so much physical changes, there's so much like hormones, even, you know, like from day to day we go through different cycles, right, as women. And so when we're not lined up necessarily in sync with that, it's hard to process the outside voices of like the public, and then the team that is again behind your project, which is like your management and, you know, your record label and things like that. And then you have the people that you're like are essentially like your coworkers, you know? So like how to like process all of that in one environment and then expect it to deliver a result, you know? And which is like sing your best, dance your best, look your best.
Well, also like, be a group and support each other, but also know you're each other's competition.
Exactly.
Who's the fan's favorite, you know, who got a lead in this part of the song, who was kicked out of the song and they're just doing ad libs. How does that make that person feel? How is the relationship going to be for the next week based off that studio session? You know, and I think like you said, you're at an age where you're 19, 20 years old, and you're starting to build your adult self-confidence, or even the identity you're going to go into, and it's so much to navigate with so many walking pieces. So did you mentioned that you dealt with a lot of anxiety during this time. What was that anxiety like to you, in case anybody is listening and is like, oh, she just probably woke up with a bad day? And then how were you, whether it was positive or negative, at that time dealing with that anxiety?
So since I was a small child, I've actually had like, I would have panic attacks, and like, you know, I wasn't aware that they were panic attacks, I think, until like just a few years ago when like it's been more like publicly known like what that even is. So I would become like very, very emotional to a point where I would be crying hysterically, and I was not able to like calm myself before entering situations where like, for example, recording always gave me like anxiety, specifically because, again, outside of the competition reality show, it was still a competition. And it's not because within the coworkers, it's management, it's labels, it's new producers. You don't know who you're working with until you get there. And even if they're meeting you off the first rip, it's like, okay, we're going to get in there. And so you're expected to perform equally good no matter the day, no matter what's happening at home. If your dad just had a stroke, which happened to me while I was on tour, you know, or like you're just, oh, well, we have rehearsal that day, I'm sorry that happened to you, but it's 10 a.m.
Right.
Like,
I think even when I was in the music industry, that was the biggest thing that a lot of people till this day thankfully like will talk highly of me that I was a part of their projects, because they were like, you remembered to not make me a robot. And I remember I would have to like check certain people in the team that I was like, have you even seen how she's doing today?
Yeah.
Because I dealt with a lot of like minors a lot of the times, and I was like, they're not, you know. And unfortunately in the industry, it's such a machine that they forget that they just want to get the product out and release it to its best potential. And yes, I understand it's a business, but there is a lot of lack of humanness in that industry, or any form of entertainment industry, I think, whether it's modeling, acting, hosting, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So you would cry uncontrollably. Did you have like your family to lean on at the time? Was it something that you were scared to share with them because then they would tell you to get out of it? How would you deal with it?
Yeah, my mom and I were very close, so I do remember calling her often and saying, you know, I'm scared to do this, or I'm just having a really hard time like walking into the situation because I feel like I have to perform my best and I'm just not feeling my best, and I'm just scared because, again, we're talking like this art was gonna last you for like months, you know. So like whatever, when you walk in and you do a single can ride you out the rest of your career. You know, it's so important, and you don't know what songs are gonna be what, and you're walking into like, this is an all or nothing situation. And it always felt like that. It always felt like, you know, like so much is riding on this moment, so you have to get it together. You're expected to perform well, you're expected to get in the booth and just give your best, and you sometimes only get like 20 tries and that's it. Okay. You know, and it's like re-auditioning every day for a part of your own, you know, art, essentially.
Yeah.
So
right, whether it be the song or the placement in the dance routine,
any of it, photos, just all of it. So it was challenging at different times. And then again, dealing with like, you know, the opinions that I'm reading online, and that can get to you. And so just trying to like maintain it all, and like just trying to like cope emotionally and mentally and like physically. There's also this thing as Latinas, you know, like my genetics is I'm curvy. I'm a curvy girl. And it's difficult when like you're in the spotlight because, and again, in the industry, it's all about like the beauty industry, and it's hard with how you feel about yourself, especially if you're told to look a certain way, especially if you're expected to look a certain way, and then that's being kind of told to you every day as well.
Was there any crazy diets you had to go through in that time?
Yes, it was extreme diets where, you know, we're in these like tiny little outfits, and it's like you don't get to wear the baggy t-shirt.
Right. I remember watching you guys perform, and I mean, I've talked about body dysmorphia. You walked in when I was filming that episode, but I specifically remember, I don't know if it was hot pink or red tiny shorts with like, I think a white top. It's like a very known picture of you performing on a stage. And I remember being like, her body is so sick. And like, she has sick. Not,
I was sick that day.
I wasn't eating.
And
I think like even the idea of like, wow, would I ever be that toned, that ripped, that, and I know now as an adult, when I see even artists today like that, I'm like, was it plastic surgery, or are they actually doing okay? It's the first thought that I think of now. Right. But back then, I remember I was like, oh, why can my body be like that?
Well, we're talking rehearsals from sun up to sundown daily for months with like hardly any sleep and hardly any food.
Yeah.
And some of those were personal choices because I'm stressed about the next day. And I'm afraid that this outfit is not going to look good, and I'm going to read more comments on YouTube. Right. So, I mean, it all goes hand in hand, and it was like definitely a trying period of my life. And I'm actually very grateful for that because I had to do a lot of self-healing to like release a lot of that. And, you know, just say, especially becoming a mom, you know, once you become a mom, it's like, oh, all bets are off. Like whatever's going to happen is going to happen to you physically when you're pregnant. You can't control it.
Right. So,
and then dealing with the, you know, what happens and changes in your body and your hormones after you become a mom too. So that was a healing process in itself, like unlearning the things that I had taken on to myself for that, you know, that season of my life, you know, in the limelight and the tiny shorts.
Yeah.
So
what would you tell your 20-year-old self, or even more importantly, because sometimes we don't love ourselves enough as much as we should, what would you tell your daughter if she was 20 years old right now and she was going and putting herself through that you were at that time?
You know, my daughter, she actually sometimes is really hard on herself. I see myself, you know, genetics are no joke. Like, I see myself in her. I tell her that, you know, God has a plan for you and a purpose for you, and there's balance, you know, and that she can always talk to me about how she's feeling, and that I believe in her. And I actually wrote a song for her to know that she's unbelievable. You know, I want her to know that she's amazing, and that I wish that she could see herself through my eyes, that this is something that comes from within her and her natural ability, God-given ability, and also her discipline in the right ways, the right choices, which is like for practices. She could skip out on practice. She's never late for practice.
Yeah.
She's always prepared. She's like the first one there and the last one to leave on her own. And I'm so proud of her for that. But I do tell her that it's really important to also listen to what's bringing you joy. If it brings you joy, then you're doing the right thing. If it's paining you to a point where it's like not healthy, you know, we're not putting this above our relationship with God. We're not putting this above our joy and our peace, because that's destructive.
When do you feel like being in the girl group no longer brought you joy?
I would say when things started falling apart internally, there was things within, you know, on the business end that I had not foreseen happening. Like, we were with a major label here in the States, and then they made a deal to now have us in a label in a different country. And so that was something that it was kind of, you know, like an adjustment that I felt wasn't like received well, and like emotionally and mentally it felt very taxing at this point, I think, to myself and other members. And so I just knew that the harmony and like the success level that we had hoped for and it, you know, wanted to experience, like there was like not a changing season where we were increasing. It felt like we were in a season where things were like decreasing within harmony, within business opportunity. And so I felt myself feeling unaligned with that. And I felt like I need to definitely take time to like pull away from this and reevaluate, you know, like why I want to be on stage, reevaluate like what it means to me, and like also if it's bringing me joy, and how to like reinvent essentially like myself.
And then you
my
decided from
perspective.
that moment to step away. How long it was between that when you started having that thought and then you came to a final decision? Like, how long was that process?
I would say not long. Like, I'm the type of person, you know, that like if I really want to go for something, I do. I don't really, and you know, I don't really contemplate on. I'm doing that more now, like as a grown woman than before. Like, I'm the type of person, if I like think something that night, the next day I'm like, well, I'm cutting off my hair. Like, I just go for decisions sometimes. And that way I'm kind of very spontaneous also. But as I've grown, I've really learned to just contemplate more of my decisions, and like I have a filter now, you know, I have a filter with God and my faith and like how that aligns for me in my relationship with God. But also, yeah, it wasn't long. I want to say like, man, I think it was a week, maybe less. So I was like, I'm not happy. This isn't working. I talked to my mom about it. I talked to different people around me, my boyfriend at the time. And I was like, okay, well, this is the vibe.
Yeah.
So,
and how did the team take it?
I think there was mutual agreement. Yeah,
Okay.
there was mutual agreement within the team. And so it was just something like, okay, well, and then I think not long after that they made an announcement, that we had disbanded. But I felt like it was what I needed at that time. And it was really interesting to me because strangely enough, I want to say a year went by. A year, maybe 2 years. My math isn't great right now, but around that time frame, I had another opportunity to work with the same team with new girls, like a new group. And so I actually was like, you know what? I remember at that time that I had met a young girl who was very talented, and I was like hanging out with her. I was like, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful. You can sing, you can dance. And I knew that the team was looking for another girl to be part of like a new project. So I decided that I should mention my friend and submit them to the camp to see if it was a good fit. And she went and she auditioned, and then I got a call back from them, and they were like, thank you for like sending talent our way, but we were actually wondering if you would do it. And I was like very shocked by that, because you know, again, like we had ended on a project. I had decided I didn't want to continue. So like even the offer was like something I had to think about. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to go back into this realm and like be able to feel healthy and good and mentally like ready for this? Because I knew what it required.
Right.
But I did. And I went into the project and I was like, okay, so here we are back in rehearsals, back in the studio. And, you know, we secure a deal with a new label. And then I find out I'm pregnant with my daughter.
How old were you then?
I was 25.
25, okay. But you liked this team, so you felt like confident with it. There was something that you said earlier that I want to kind of piggyback for this part, that now you found out you were pregnant. I always say the way I make decisions is, as long as I feel peace with it, even if it's unknown territory, I will keep walking. And I feel like the peace comes from my relationship with God, because I truly ask God, like, what should I do in this moment? I don't want it to be ego. I don't want it to be pride. I don't want to hurt anyone in the process. I understand I may not be understood, but I want to move with the way that you want me to move. And I always say it, and I journal this a lot: God, grab my hand so that I could be led by you. So in this moment, you made the decision to go into a new group. You felt okay with it in the moment. You were walking with it. You find out you're pregnant. I've never been pregnant, so I don't know that experience, but it's obviously a life-changing decision. You have to decide now. I've been in the industry long enough to know pregnancy, you got to be really solidified to go through that with it, you know? So like, how do you decide how to even bring up the fact that you're pregnant to a label where you just are now in a new, it's not like you're 4 years into Gloralicious, you know, it's a whole new project.
And it's brand new. It's brand new. It was very difficult. I was very afraid. I was scared. I was scared to tell my mom, essentially. And because I felt like I was letting her down, or the family down, or like deciding to do something that wasn't in the spotlight, or like music driven, career driven, like this was going to be a new chapter for me. But at the same time, I realized that both of those dreams were always equally valid in my life. My dream for a family and to be married and to be a mother was always in my heart. So, you know, I feel like sometimes in the industry, they go against each other, or they had in the past. Like it was like you had to choose as a woman to do your career or make time for a family, because it was hard to have both. And we're in a different era. We're in a different like time and space, which I'm so grateful for, because I see so many women out here being mothers and still, you know, having a career and doing amazing things, even if they take time and space to do those things. So it was difficult. And, you know, I did get married before I found out I was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
I got married, and at the time, you know, my fiance, he said to me, listen, like, you've done the girl group thing, like you've gone on tour. It was hard on our relationship. Like, let's make a decision, because we're, number one, we've been together for so long. Like it was like years and years and years. And it's like, and then when he asked me to marry him at Christmas. So that was December. And then I didn't get married until August. So I ventured off into the girl group, engaged. And then I decided to get married. And right away, I would say like 4 weeks later, I was pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe more.
I recently saw a clip. It wasn't the whole episode, but I saw a viral clip of Victoria on Michelle Obama's podcast. And she mentioned that when she let her team know that she was pregnant, one of her team members at that time actually made a PowerPoint presentation explaining to her what she was walking away from having this pregnancy.
Wow.
And I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah. It was a difficult thing to bring up, and I even suggested, well, I could record the album while I'm pregnant, and then after, like, we can do the tour or do this, and that was not an option. I was told no. I was told essentially I'm making a decision by keeping my child. So that was a really difficult...
So were you kicked out of the group?
Essentially, yeah. Because I had even, I think, put together like a list to management, even got on calls and was like, well, we can do this, we can do that. If we need to film a video, I know different stand-ins that like are amazing dancers. And it was like, this is a new thing. We need an all-in or not an all-in. And it was a painful decision at that time to say, it was a painful experience. It wasn't a painful decision. It was a painful experience to that be the ultimatum. Because I was like, wow, well, I did do the girl group thing. Like I did do with the same team and the same, you know, not the same girls essentially, but like, you know, management and things like that. And I was like, well, man, okay, so this is the decision that I'm going to make, and this is also another dream of mine, and I've never walked in these shoes before. Yeah. So we're going to try something new. And
did you ever have the idea or the battle within yourself of, what if I would have chosen the opposite? Because I've never been in that position, I wouldn't know what I would have done, right? But actually 2 nights ago, somebody asked me if I was to get pregnant now at my age, would I even choose one or the other? And I said, no, I would have it, because in this day and age, like, I'm going to have it. I'm being smart with who I'm choosing to be with.
Right.
And, you know, in this instance, you were married, yeah. You had already traveled the world, but what if you didn't fulfill all your dreams as a performer? And I think that 2 things can coincide in the same moment of mourning the fact that you're having to let go of something in a career, the idea of it, right? Because now you look at it in hindsight and you're like, you don't have to give it up. Right. But you're given 2 things at that moment of, you either give this up and the sadness of I'm having to mourn something, or you step into this that is going to be beautiful because it's a different journey of life, but now it's scary. I've never done this before. I've always wanted this. You know, like, how do you navigate that even at that time?
It was all faith. It was a moment of like, God, I don't have the power to do this, to create life in the way that you do. So this is a blessing. This is a move by the hand of God. And so at that point, I was like, you know me, you know my future, you know everything that's going to essentially make me who I'm supposed to become. So I'm going to trust you in this. And as scary as it was to tell my mom and to tell, you know, the team that I was going to make this decision, I did it, and I stood on faith, and I stood on something outside of myself, and also the dream to have a family, but also the love of I feel like you feel different when there's a soul inside of you. You feel like their purpose, you know, you feel different. You're no longer just yourself. And so I was very much moved by that. And I felt my daughter's presence, and I believed she had a purpose so big that this had to happen right now in this moment in time. And whatever I was going to walk away from, no matter how scary, was going to be worth it. Yeah. And so I walked through that, and it was a very difficult season because now I have no monetary income. And at the same time, my husband got laid off. So, and then at that time I was also in my 20s. So like, not a lot of my friends were having kids. Yeah. I was alone. People were like, I lived far too. It was way out, like near the IE. So like, that was really hard for me because it was a lonely season. It was a broke season. It was the one glimmer of hope I had was this little human being growing inside of me. And I remember journaling a lot and like prayers, like so many prayers. And I still have that journal for her to look back and to read. And I haven't given it to her yet, but one day. And so speaking to her inside of me, not knowing whether she was a she or a he at that time, and just had the hard moments, and like, you know, knowing that it was all going to be worth it, but just trusting that it was going to be worth it no matter how hard the day was to get through. Like, not even having like $20 for gas, like it was like really, really hard and difficult. But
and again, then from that moment that you were pregnant, that's when you went on and got in a girl group with your sisters?
After I gave birth.
Okay, so you had your whole pregnancy to just sit with self, and just isolate. Is that around the time also that you went off social media?
I was still on social media here and there about the pregnancy with my daughter. I would post on little things. I decided to give up social media after I got pregnant with my son. So that was like a 2-year space of like, I just didn't go on at all. But when I was pregnant with my daughter, I did go on here and there, like little cute pictures of the bump growing and stuff. I wasn't really doing much, but the same thing every day. So it wasn't like a lot to document essentially. But I had my daughter. My husband at the time got a new job, which was great. And I remember like as soon as I gave birth to her, I remember singing her lullabies and like just singing to her and wanting to like, I don't know, just obviously like as a mom, you want to soothe your baby, but I felt creative again. And I remember my sisters were really the only ones around when I had my baby. I didn't have like a lot of friends because they weren't having kids, but my sisters lived with me. Like we lived together. So it was like, you know, they were there, they would help me watch her and like just experience this with me. And so I remember I had a birthday one year, and my sister and I, it was like a really loud club, but I hugged her and I told her how proud I was of her and that she was like such a star and I believed in her. And she told me, she's like, you know, thank you. She's like, but I was like, I'll help you. Like, what is it? Like, you know, I believe in you. What do you need? She's like, I would love that. I would love for you to like help me. So I hugged her, and I just remembered thinking to myself, like, she has incredible talent. We grew up in the same house. She has a love for music. I was like, we're finally, like 6 years is a big deal when you're like in your teenage years, but when you're in your 20s, it's not so much.
You're able to relate more.
You're able to relate more. And I was like, we should be doing this together. We spend so much time together at home all the time. Like, and we ended up going to the studio. I remember just like on a fun thing. Like I wasn't even like, let's work. It was like, let's just hang out. And then we started messing around creatively, and like we did a song together, and we're like, wait a minute, are we like a girl group now? And it just like happened. So we had our first single, and my other sister, she wanted to act and model, and she was not really much for like music, but she was like, she loved to dance. She's like, all right, I'll rap. She's like, I'm a poet. So like, I was like, all right, that's what it's going to be. So the three of us, we went out and we started performing, and like we ended up booking a tour and like all this, you know, stuff. But it was like, it was more like, it was just family. It was just like what we would always do anyways, like at home. So it just felt different. I don't see it as like it was just a business. It was just us being sisters and us just like going and getting invited to things and be like, hand us a mic. Like it was just like living, I guess. It was
fun. Yeah.
It was fun and cool. And so then, you know, I ended up deciding to become a solo artist. So that was just a new venture. And again, like you said, the 27, 28 like age, it's like so many things change. It's just like you look around and you're like, what am I going to do? You know, like whatever I'm going to do is really going to go the distance. It's not about just like experimenting anymore. It's like, I already know I don't like that because you tried that 5 times.
Right. The 6th, honey, you should start realizing.
I'm like, wait a minute. We're not going to do that again. We're going to do something new. So yeah, that's when I decided.
And when you decided to go into your solo career, what do you think you were stepping into differently than before? Were you wanting to aim for the top of the stars, reaching over the moon and everything, or were you just trying to do things that brought you peace and joy and for the fun of it? Because it seems like you had all different options. You did the girl group with your family where it was, like you said, fun, joyful after having your daughter. You were in this factory of like situation before twice.
Yes.
And then now you're like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to carry the mic, I'm going to carry the choreo, I'm going to carry the singing, but I'm now 2 kids in, right? One kid just in. One. You're one, and you're stepping back into it. You're putting back kind of in the lion's den.
Yeah.
But what are you shifting going into that as a solo artist that's different from when you were before?
I think being more vulnerable.
Okay.
I think listening to how I felt. I was so in touch at that point with like my emotions, because being a mom is like you have to be more in touch with another person's emotions on a different level, because this baby and this person is relying on you to kind of have cues and they don't really speak. So like it's a different emotional depth that I started to develop, and like, you know, listen to what made me feel good and what made me happy. And at that time I was in love. So I wanted to do music that reflected, they were like all like love songs essentially. And it wasn't so much about being like this sassy girl with like, you know, being a baby doll or being this. It was more about like, I'm in love. This is like, you know, who I am when I feel like I'm in love. Like this is what you make me feel. So that's what the music was about, and I felt very connected to it. But I also felt like because I was stepping out again, I wasn't signed to a major label as a solo artist. So when I came out, it was like, how do I feel today?
Yeah.
It was now like, do I feel like going and doing that interview? Do I feel like I wasn't? When you're working for a big label and a big company, it's like you have other people depending on whether you show up or you don't. There is like a process to it. But because it was like myself, I was depending on like whether or not how far I got was on me. and like how far I wanted to go.
And you wanted to do your solo career as an independent, or it just so happened that that's where you were doing?
At the time I wanted to do it, as an independent, because I had learned essentially the formula, like from the label. And I was like, man, I don't want to give up these freedoms, because there's certain things that you don't necessarily have a say. You're inviting yourself to be expanded by professionals who do this in a very specific way. And I was like, I'm kind of an emotional being right now. So like I'm going through the ebbs and flows of like feeling good about doing something and then not feeling so good about doing something a different day. And I want to be honest with that. I don't want to just like pump out stuff that doesn't feel, I'm not a machine anymore. I'm not a robot anymore.
And since then, you've gone through so many different journeys, but you then released a new project now, and it's a Christian project, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what made you go from doing love songs that were still, I guess the term, secular, to then deciding to create a whole Christian project?
So I got saved in 2020. So I gave my life to God and I got baptized, and that was a very amazing experience for me, a very like life-changing experience. And I now felt in my heart that it just wasn't about a monetary standpoint. It wasn't about getting on a stage and just like doing whatever, singing whatever for like a job, you know? And sometimes when you're in a situation, you're choosing a career path, you're essentially looking at it as a monetary thing to provide for your life, you know? Things cost things. At that time I said, well, you know, God, like, use me for your glory, for your kingdom. Let me tell my story from a very personal perspective, and it's a testimony too. It was what God brought me through, where I am in my faith today. And also I wanted to be message music for impact, to share whatever wisdom I learned about the trials I've been through in the industry, but also like with my faith, like when I've been really strong in my faith and sometimes where I felt weaker or pulled away. And so I wanted that to be the highlight of why I do what I do, and use that gift that I felt like God gave me with a different purpose, as opposed to just providing.
You mentioned that when you were in Girlicious, you were journaling a lot and talking to God even while going through the pregnancy. So what do you think changed from your relationship to God, that when you were growing up to when you finally decided to, in 2020, shift your life, shift how you were moving, and really give your life to God?
I really believe that I was still moving from a place of self. Like, what does Natalie want to do? Like, it was more about how I wanted things to happen. It was more of like a control. So like I want to control the outcome. So like X plus this equals this, you know, like. And I think when I became a disciple of God, when I got baptized, I shifted from now, what purpose does God have for me? You know, who does God believe I am? Or what was I created for? Not just like, what do I feel like doing just cause. It was more of like a greater purpose and a greater serving to how I can help with whatever I've learned, whatever experience I've gone through, to help another person, another young woman, another young man go through something, maybe in the industry, maybe becoming a parent, maybe in love and relationships, because I'm married and I've been through that experience. Like whatever mess I was in can turn to a message. Whatever test I had could turn into a testimony. So like that's exactly what I felt like I was called to do by writing this album, and finally writing it all myself. And so coming from a perspective that was true, and not from a perspective of someone else who says, hey, listen, this is going to make a lot of money, sing these lyrics, and it's going to be a hit. You know, I'm like, I don't know if it's going to be a hit. It's coming from the heart, but like, we'll see, you know? Yeah.
And what would you tell now, like looking at yourself, who you are today, what would you tell that Natalie that was trying to prove so much back then?
I would say that God has always had a plan, and that you trying to be the God of your life or the controller of your life is you running in circles, because you're changing from day to day. But believing in God and believing in a Lord who knows you so well and has a plan for your life, and ultimately to help others have that relationship, you know, with God, and feel a power that's great, joy, goodness, and sharing that, like filling up on that, and then having an outpouring, you know, of that was so important. So I would say to myself, just continue to pray, continue to look for that relationship with God, and it's all going to work out.
I think a lot of the times when I hear people express things like this, I think of like a visual image, and instantly when you were saying that I saw like an ocean and two different deserted islands. Well, you don't even see the island that's so big on the left. You see the one that's in front of you because you're just looking forward, right? You're not looking left or right to see what other possibilities could there be there.
Yeah.
And I think that that's self when you're trying to run and control your own life.
Yeah.
And, you know, some people can say, I'm very motivational, I'm very dedicated, I'm very disciplined. And those all could be true. But you're going against the current to try to get to that island that's in front of you, when you don't realize that once you let go, if you would be able to turn left and be like, the island is right there.
Yeah.
The island is right there, and I'm doing so much work for this that is so small, when this is so big. If I just let go, and it will carry you to that island. And I think a lot of the times in life, whether it be in our 20s, whether it be in our 30s, 40s, hey, sometimes even in our 80s, we're so strong on knowing that we're supposed to get there, that we don't even stop and calm the noise to realize that was never our purpose. We were supposed to see it so that eventually we can see what it looks like, but realize that something so much more beautiful is to the left of us.
Yeah.
And I think that you wouldn't have been able to see what you see and know now if you wouldn't have experienced what you went through. And be a testimony to other girls, whether it be to go about it in the right way, to know when to listen to yourself, to know when to shift the narrative even if it is uncomfortable, and that you could have joy in career, you can have joy in different decisions that you make, but to be able to know when it's no longer fun, you have to go in and be like, what is unaligned?
Yeah.
Because in alignment you feel peace, in alignment you feel joy, in alignment your nervous system is not crashing. And I think that a lot of the times in society we're taught your nervous system is crashing because you're stressed, it's fine, but once you pass over the stress, it'll be calm. And then you realize that you start becoming addicted to this stress and nervous system environment, and when you don't have that, you think something's going wrong. But really in peace you really find your true alignment, because you're not dealt with all these feelings of having to continuously prove yourself.
Yes.
And I feel like that's what age brings you. Discernment, wisdom. True wisdom is truly being able to be like, you may think I'm not doing good because I'm here, but I'm actually better than I've ever been, and I can feel aligned.
Yes.
You know, like the idea that people have of us.
I do think that you said something about feeling like the ideas of others like affecting your, or like their ideas of your peace or where you are in life. Because it's so interesting that for 2 years without social media, I was in the best place ever in my life. Peace. I would wake up and whatever I wanted to do that day is what I did, and whatever was in front of me, I was able to be present and in the moment with my kids, with my family. And a lot of people were like, is she okay? Like, what's going on? I'm like, I actually felt so freed from it. And then I think that, you know, my hands were full with the kids too, because they were so little at that time, and they finally went to school. People ask me about this all the time, like, oh, when did you decide to come back to social media? Well, honestly, my kids went to school and I was like, oh, the house is so quiet. It's like, besides working out, what do I do now? Like, you know, I got involved in my church and I got on the worship team, and, you know, I started serving and doing different things. And I was like, you know what? I think that I feel like strong enough in my faith to now share like in my life and like what has been going on for the last couple of years, and this joy, I wanted it to, you know, pour out, and for others to kind of, now I was comfortable with sharing my journey, like where I was, and it wasn't, it's like not like a burden to me, but it was so funny. I just remember people being like, are you alive? Are you okay? I'm like, I'm good, actually. Like, I feel so free to be able to let something like this go. My husband still doesn't have social media. From that time that we gave it up, he was like, I'm not going back, I'm good. So like, he's very at peace with that. He doesn't feel the need to be on social media. But I think it's just really interesting how, don't let, you know, like others, you know,
don't let others define your peace.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now I have one last question for you. What is a song now in your latest project that means the most to you, and why?
That's a great question, because I'm so attached to all of them because I wrote them. But there's 3. I'm gonna say 3 out of the 7 that I just feel so like I feel really good about. I feel really good about all of them, but I will say that they're so close to my heart for different reasons. Unbelievable is a song I wrote for my daughter. So that is just special to me because my love for her is like just so immense and can't really be described. And that's a reflection of how I feel. I pray she, like, it's a letter to her, but for her to like see herself the way that I see her. And then also, I would say It Could Happen to You is a very important song to me, because it's talking about the midst of the height of my career and like what it felt like on the inside. And maybe not how it looked on the outside, but I remember this because, again, journaling through that process, you know, on tour and different moments in the hotel rooms by myself. So I remember all the feelings, and I put that in that song. So it's just important for the journey, because I talk about how like people like measure success as to, again, other people's perspective of your success, thinking that it's bringing you the most happiness, but it isn't always true, you know. And I think that was important to share, because I feel like I had gotten everything I thought I ever wanted. I was like, oh, I've been working for this since I was 12 years old to make the height of this, where my music meant something, or like people saw me, came to, you know, my show and things like that. And I was like, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like. And it was really difficult to process all of those things. It was not what I thought, actually. So I reflected on that, and I was like, I just want people to know that like your joy and your peace is not reflective of like what others consider your success, you know? So it could happen to you. Just always checking in with yourself and God, and always figuring out how to pivot. So that's important. And then pray. Pray is really, really important too, because my life would be nothing without my prayer life. I think that's such a, like, it just goes hand in hand. Like I don't function without prayer. And I feel like everything that you see or a fruit of that is blessing because of that prayer and that communion and that relationship with God. So I attest all of the things that whatever may be appealing to you, like in my life and my persona and anything that you can positively be impacted by, is not to my credit, but to God's credit and to our conversation.
Well, I loved everything that you shared. I loved how open you were. I loved that you were able to be so transparent about your pivots and your transitions. And, you know, choosing yourself, choosing to have a life that you felt brought you more peace, that brought you more clarity, that brought you more of an alignment, and a reminder that women could go through so many different changes and you can still achieve many, many, many dreams that we have. You could go and tackle new challenges, new obstacles, and new blessings through time and time again in our life. You know, I think a lot of the times we think we only have such limited time, and even society, companies, people keep putting that down our throat. But you're a true testament that you could continue to reinvent yourself. You can continue to do things that bring you joy, and most importantly, as long as you're aligned and have peace within you, it will come to fruition. It's a Latina in me. But I loved having you on here. I think for anybody that's watching, just remember, like I always say, we are more similar than different. And maybe our categories that we're going through in life, maybe you're not a pop star on stages, you know, going around the world, but you do have different ebbs and flows. You have different responsibilities and ideas of where you should be from other people or from self. And it's just sitting back with self and truly not limiting yourself, but also being honest with yourself through every season and age that we go through, because we're forever evolving.
Yes.
And you're a testament of that.
Thank you for
I loved
that.
having you on. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to share, but yeah.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy that I could come, and I really enjoyed this with you. I think you're beautiful, and you have such a beautiful heart, and I'm so glad that you're doing this. And yeah, thank you for giving me a space to talk about my journey, and thank you for saying that. That meant a lot to me to hear that, you know. I always hope to just share whatever experience I've been through in a positive way, and I always, when I hear that, it just feels so good to like know that it's being received. So thank you.
For those that want to listen to your latest project, what is it called?
It's called Holy Exodus. You can find it on iTunes, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Spotify, all the platforms, and you can check out my socials, Natalie and Mejia. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're gonna go play it. So until next time, that is all for this episode.